Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of Dragons and Dice. Today I'm going to go over how me and my home table have switched from the old 2014 materials to the new 2024 stuff. We'll go over how we've used the VTT to help with combat, as the weapon masteries have added a lot of complexity to combat in the new D&D. And I'll go over a few of the things that I really like and some things that I don't, and I hope you enjoy. Welcome to Dragons and Dice. Okay, so me and my home table, we have switched over from the 2014 5e rules to the new 2024 material. And there's a good little bit of changes with that. Their subclasses and classes are a lot different. Spell preparation works entirely different, not to mention that the spell list for all the classes have been changed. Some spells added, some removed, some just adjusted. Paladins are a huge difference, only being able to smite one time around, and smite being a spell, so the barbarians can't even use it now. And so this took a little bit of doing, but if you're willing to jump in and try it, I think it's worth it because we have really enjoyed the new material. One of the things that we've done as we shifted to the new materials, we've also moved to playing on a virtual tabletop of VTT. And I think this is kind of like goes hand in hand with the way D&D and Wizards has been made lately, because weapon masteries make combat so much more fluid. There's tons of abilities now that let characters get to move without taking opportunity attacks, and almost every weapon attack and tons of spells all have abilities that either topple someone, pull someone, push someone, and it just makes combat where there's a lot of movement going on, and it's a lot to keep up with if you're trying to play with minis and a grid, which is what we used to do, and I'm still a big fan of. But I have to say, I'm like quickly being converted to a technology guy, I guess, because the virtual tabletop is just a lot of fun with this. And with the way we're running our home table, we're doing a 1 to 20 campaign, and so we're at level 10 right now, so we're about a third of the way through for that long of campaign. It'll be a 2 to 3 year ordeal to get it finished. We didn't just want to jump in and try to change everything and then not like it and have to switch back. And so what I'd like to talk about is a few ways of going about testing out the new material to see if it's going to be right for you and your table, and if your players like it, and if you're capable of running the VTTs with D&D Beyond or any of the other ones, Roll20, Owlbear Rodeo, whichever you like. They all are functional and work. VTT on D&D Beyond is just the one that I chose because that's the subscription I have. So use whichever you like, but I would suggest give it a test run. And the way we went about doing this at my home table was I'd assigned a memory for the party to play through. That way, if we got through with it and they didn't like it, we could just go back to the 5e material, no harm done, and we got to test out the new stuff. And it turned out it worked great, and then we transitioned our whole game into the new material. The way I structured the test play was like a 5 session long shot or mini campaign, and they got to play through a memory that was the origin story for the BBEG. And I ended up liking this for a lot of reasons. Like I said, we're doing a full 1 to 20 campaign. That's a long time to play the same character in D&D. So one of the caveats when we did this, and I would suggest if you take a test run and just like do this same type thing, we had each character make a different class. That way they got to try out something different. And I kind of pushed the people toward trying out the martial classes, because that's one of the biggest changes, is the way that the weapon masteries have worked. And it turned out really fun. Everyone seemed to really like the weapon masteries. Like, there was a ton of shenanigans went on with all the push, pull, topples, and all the crazy stuff that you can do now. And this was a great way to let the people at my table try out new characters, get to try out the new material, try out the new combat tactics that go along with the weapon masteries. And when we made this transition, it was also a good learning curve for us switching over to VTT, because we've been playing grid, minis, markers up until that point. And so we switched to everyone made their character on D&D Beyond, and we played it on VTT that I loaded my maps up on. Another advantage that I found and that I really liked doing this long shot version for was that it speeds up my DMing, the combat part of my DMing, a lot. It is so nice to just type in a monster's name, drag its icon to the block, and you're good to go. Same thing with the players and their characters. They're all just loaded there. You can auto roll initiative. It has really sped up our game a lot. Probably went from having, two small combat encounters and one bigger encounter in an evening, plus the role play that goes along with it, to we're getting through 4 or 5 encounters and still having plenty of time to do role play, exploration. It seems like having everything there on the screen just keeps everybody quick at doing what they're doing, and it's all just like, oh, I'm going to do this. You don't have to look up what your spell does. You just click it right there from your stat sheet and you're ready to rock and roll. So we really like that part about switching over to VTT. And the other thing is we had a couple people get sick and have to work late, and normally that would just be they missed that night because we're all just playing in person off our old character sheets. They got home late, they just signed on, played from their house. The flexibility that it gave us was really nice. It's a really good upgrade to being able to keep your games moving and to keep your sessions going on schedule, because it makes it a lot more flexible if you don't have to get to someone's house and you can just sign onto your laptop. I'm not saying that's what you should do all the time, because I'm a big proponent of hanging out with your buddies and, having drinks and dinner and all the shenanigans that go on at a D&D night. That part shouldn't be missed, but it is nice to have that option that if you're playing it online, you can be there in the same room doing it, or if you can't make it, you can still enjoy the game. So I understand that 5 to 6 sessions may be more than you have to give up for your campaign to learn something like we did, and that this might not work for you. So here are my suggestions if that's not an option for you. You could have your DM or one of the players who wants to try out the new stuff make a one shot, run it with your group. They can play the same characters they're playing, or they can make new ones. I would suggest making new ones with the 2024 rules, because a lot of stuff's changed, like we said. And if you have that option, load it up on your VTT, give it a try. It's one session. If you don't like it, go back. If you do like it, try it again. After 2 or 3 times, you're like, well, hey, let's make the switch. Then you can go through redoing everybody's spell sheets and all that. And then the other option is you can find a one shot out in the world, go to one of your gaming stores or wherever you can play D&D around your house, and find one that's running a new 2024 material, whether it's at a bookshop or wherever. Sign up, spend a session doing that, see how you like it. And then the third option is you can just go for it, switch your stuff over and give it a try. I'll vouch for it. I think it's great. We've enjoyed the switch. We'll probably never go back. There's no probably. We'll never go back to running the 5e stuff. We just like the new stuff better. It just seems a lot more fun and a lot more fluid. So when you decide to make these changes, you got to do a little bit of work, and this is how we made that transition. When we got back to our main campaign and it was time, we decided to remake all our characters under the 2024 rules. I also gave out a one-time free character swap if you wanted to, or change subclasses, as some of the stuff's different. And I feel like this was a good time for that, as we're, like I said, level 10. And then we have a evocation wizard. We let her redo her entire spell book, and I think this is something that you should do if you make this transition. As we said, the spells have changed a lot, and especially for classes like wizards and bards that have known spells and they don't get to just prepare their spell list from anything. There's a lot of spells that they may not have taken that now that they've been changed, they might want. I mean, you can look at like the old chromatic orb. It did 3d8. It's not a bad spell. Now it does 2d8, and if you roll duplicates, it jumps and you make a new attack roll and get to re-roll that damage. Still kind of meh, but the big change is that on that upcast, it goes up by 1d8, and it can jump an extra time for each time that it's cast. So if you take this spell at level 9, it's going to auto jump and do 10d8, and the only thing that can stop it is the number of monsters that's there within range of it, and that you have to roll to hit each new monster. This is just an example of I skipped that spell, but now I'd really like to have it. So part of this transition should be allowing people to rework the spell list, especially of the known casters. Another change we had was we had a Hexblade Warlock. That subclass is a little bit obsolete now, the way they've changed evocations, and you can take Pact of the Blade at level 1. So we let him just change his subclass. He went with Fey Warlock now. And it's, just a lot easier to be a good Gish Warlock under the new rules, like with the changes to evocations and all those. And those are just a few things to like keep in mind when you switch over. And the old stuff still works with mist material. If you have people that want to play an older subclass, it's not a problem. We have a creation bard, and that's a Tasha's Cauldron of Everything subclass. He just made a new bard, took a new spell list, and picked that old subclass. All he had to do was select the legacy tab on when he was making his characters. All the materials was there. He loaded a creation bard, but made with a new spell list. And this is just those things you should keep in mind as you make the transition, especially for your spellcasters and for your melee people, because they'll be having to take weapons mastery, and a lot of things have changed. Give them the option if you're going to make the switch, like you're in the middle of a long campaign. Let them change their stuff around a bit. It's not going to break your game, and it lets you make the transition to the new stuff, and everyone's like, oh, I got to try out all the cool new features, as opposed to being like, well, we're playing new rules, but I'm still hamstrung by I'm a subclass that wasn't updated or anything like that. Now it's time for the homebrewed item of the week. Okay, so this week's homebrewed item is not a homebrewed item at all. It's a reward system for when they kill bosses. So when they have a big boss fight or anything that's like a epic type creature, I like to give out a small special ability that just boosts the party. Like they killed an evil moon druid werewolf, and this was when they were early level, and one of the people were infected as a werebear during this encounter. And so what I gave out as the ability was they could suppress lycanthropy one time a day. And they could do this, whenever they needed it, and whenever that character would turn into a werebear, they could suppress it if they chose to. They fought a couple of dragons. They killed a blue dragon in a battle arena, and I gave out a chromatic infusion, kind of like they do in Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, but it was tweaked a little bit on number of uses and the amount of damage it did. And it's on a rogue, so he can activate it, and it just gives out like extra lightning damage to all of his attacks. They killed a black dragon, and this is after we'd started playing the new rules. And so under the new material, all dragons have really awesome spell lists that they're always prepared. So when they killed this one, I gave out, as a black dragon, I gave out the ability to cast Melf's Acid Arrow as a bonus action ability. They can do it proficiency bonus a time, and it doesn't interact with other spells because it's ability, not a spell here. And it's just like a neat little way to give out your party boost that kind of make the big fights feel better. One thing of note, I do this in two different ways. You can either give it out to the person who gets the killing blow. I tend not to do that all the time because, you got fighters and paladins up there smashing crap. That doesn't make them any more valuable than the druid and the cleric that were in the back, healing and casting concentration spells the whole time. So the way I like to do it, if you have a good party and they're open to it, let them vote who they think the MVP was for that battle. Or if you don't think they'll be fair, you being the DM, you know who caused the most trouble for you during that fight. Give them the ability as an MVP reward for the big boss fight. Add them to your game. I'm sure your players will love it. Okay, so my overall feelings for the new material, I really like it. There are a few things that can be a bit cumbersome to handle as a DM. The biggest one that I've found is it's very easy for your monsters to get knocked prone and have its speed reduced so much that they can't get up. And once your players figure out that they can start cheesing monsters this way, the topple ability on weapon mastery, it doesn't have a size limit. If you got a Goliath, they can topple stuff that's large or smaller, which is a plenty of good high CR monsters. And then you can start hitting them with slows and hamstrings, and you can literally topple a monster, reduce its speed to where it can never stand up. So it only attacks with disadvantage. All your melee people are hitting with advantage. It's one of those things that kind of needs to be tweaked, I think, just a little bit. I don't know if that's what Wizards meant to have happen with the weapons masteries, and I'm sure there's going to be tons of other cheeses that you can do. There's tons of cheese grater abilities now with the way monk classes are set up and the ability to like thorn whip and push stuff, and that's always been part of the game. It's a little cheesy if your players do it. You have to kind of like overcome it as a DM. But that's one of the few things I've seen that's kind of a little bit broke is the topple ability, because prone's just a pain in the butt as a DM to have, you got a dragon, your dragon got knocked prone. It can get knocked prone out of the air and take fall damage. That's a little awkward mechanically to kind of get your head around. But other than that, I'm a real big fan of the weapon masteries. Like, I love them. I think they're great. You know, they're a lot of fun to see, people going out there and you're like, you got a monk punching something and like getting it off your back line because they can push it 10 feet each time they hit and they've got a ton of movement. So they're like, pow, 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 pow. And then that thing's been pushed back 30 feet during its turn. It's really neat to see the ability the players have to use these abilities in combat to manipulate where the monsters are, push them into spells, throw them into lava, knock them off cliffs, yank them into the party so other people can hit them. It's really good. I like it overall. There's just a couple little things that, could be changed to make it better, but that may just be me being the old grumpy DM, not liking my big baddies getting knocked on their faces. And the only other thing that I will say that's really different, the amount of movement and combat that weapon masteries add and the way the new abilities are set up, it's kind of hard to run theater of the mind anymore with these type of combat encounters. I'll still use theater of the mind for skill challenges and maybe for small cinematic event / loose combat battles, but running a full encounter with more than one or two baddies, it's going to be all but obsolete because you have to keep up with where this guy's been pushed, that person's been pulled, and it's just a lot of movement. There's 15-20 foot of movement happening in the middle of your fighter's turn now. It's not just I'm going to do this cool thing. It kind of negates the theater of the mind, and it really kind of lends itself more to, like we were talking about earlier, using a VTT for your games. But other than that, I'm fine using the VTT. I love it. I think it's great. That's just one of those, if you're a theater of the mind guy, it does take a little bit away from the creativity that happens in the fight, because now instead of like, I'm going to jump off this wall, run over and hit that guy with my bow staff, tripping him and then smack him in the head. Now it's like you're dragging your cursor, pulling your token across, saying what you're doing. So you kind of got to try to encourage your players to keep that creativity going, because otherwise you're just moving chess pieces, which is still fun, but I always enjoy the cool role play aspect and describing what you're doing and, the cool superhero-y, super villainy, if you're the DM, stuff that goes on in D&D combats. But other than that, I'm a huge fan of the new stuff. I would highly suggest, if you've got the ability and somebody's got a master subscription to D&D Beyond to be able to host games with it or whatever VTT you're using, I would suggest switching over and giving it a try. We have liked it a lot. Well, folks, that's it for this episode of Dragons and Dice. Thanks for tuning in and spending your time listening to me go on about my favorite TTRPG, Dungeons and Dragons. And like always, anytime you could leave a review, a follow, or a like wherever you get your podcast, it'd be greatly appreciated as it helps with the exposure of a new show. We're also now on Instagram. You can check us out in the link below. And until next time, may your DMs be kind, may your D20s roll high. Bye.